Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Thrive Talks. We'll just give it a few seconds as more and more people join. But Mukta, how are you as we give it 20 seconds before we start our conversations?
All well. Thank you so much. Quite excited to be here today and looking forward.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. Looking forward to the conversation. And we have such a fascinating bunch of themes to discuss with you. So I'm just going to get, I think I'm going to dive right in, and as people will join us. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on Thrive Talks. As you know, this is actually a weekly now dialogue with India's best talent custodians that we have. My name is Shreyasi Singh. I'm one of the founders of Harappa and the company's CEO. And if Harappa is essentially an online learning company which focuses on cognitive, social, and behavioral skills, or what we call Thrive skills, and therefore Thrive Talks. We began Thrive Talks earlier this year, really just because if there's one thing that the pandemic has really shaped and shifted and disrupted and also created new opportunities for, it's the way we work, and it's the way we enable our teams to work and the policies that we create. And there's so much conversation and so many challenges each one of us as talent and people custodians face. We felt like it was important for all of us to come together and hear sort of right from within the trenches decision-making and ideas and policies that India's best talent custodians are creating, and therefore Thrive Talks. Of course, today I'm delighted to have, I'm saying, one of the most impressive and thoughtful talent custodians I have recently met. Welcome to Thrive Talks, Mukta. Mukta, just for everyone, a very quick introduction. She's the head of human resource and sustainability at Marks and Spencer. I'm sure many of us shop at her stores and have benefited from Marks and Spencer's incredible portfolio of products. Mukta obviously has lots of diversified experience across all business aspects of human resources. And Marks and Spencer, under her tenure, has also been voted one of India's best companies to work for in 2019. She's passionate about D&I, All Smart Women Are, and launched the Women in Retail program to promote gender diversity across stores for Walmart India, where she was before. And she's also been instrumental in the launch of the Pride chapter at Amex. That's again a rich conversation for us to have, Mukta, on another Thrive Talks, hopefully. But welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much, Shreyasi. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to our interaction today.
Excellent. So everyone, how Thrive Talks work is we try and make it sort of, detailed and textured. So the next 55 odd minutes will be split across 3 themes. And each theme we will cover about 10 to 15 minutes of conversations. And at the end of each 10, 15 minutes of conversations, we'll invite questions and not just have questions from the audience at the end in the last 7 minutes of a 1-hour conversation, but to have it throughout the discussion, because sometimes the questions are more pointed to the immediate theme. The 3 broad themes with Mukta we thought was fascinating for us to cover, given the fact that she is from retail and Marks & Spencer is a brand. And nothing has been changed as much as the physical act of shopping and also the things we buy for. The 3 themes we're going to focus on is first, obviously, unique to retail companies is the difference between the corporate staff and storefront or frontline staff, however all of you describe it. Second, of course, is how the customer and shopping experience itself has changed in this, this new world of hybrid. And third will be really what the business has also changed in the world of hybrid. And in each of these, obviously, our point of focus is to see how people policies are impacted by the customer experience, the difference between frontline store staff and corporate headquarters, as well as the unique challenges of business models changing and what is the impact on people's business. So Mukta, driving right in to the first theme, right? About the difference between how do you navigate the differences between the frontline staff or store staff and corporate headquarters. And I've been speaking to talent custodians and HR heads, even at manufacturing companies. And they said it's tricky and nuanced to navigate through this so that there are no angst and bitterness that the storefront staff might have towards the corporate staff who have been in extended work from home. So tell us, how has Marks and Spencer navigated through these 2 distinct workforce segments?
Very pertinent question, Shreyasi, and I would agree with the manufacturing take on this. It's very similar for us as well. So if you look at how the pandemic has kind of shaped the lives of our colleagues, it's actually impacted frontline very differently than it has impacted the office colleagues. Initially when the lockdown was announced, workload dropped significantly for store colleagues, whereas it kind of amplified to another level for office colleagues who had to kind of go back to the drawing board and rethink what the future of the business was going to look like. So engagement for us, historically was always about keeping things consistent across store colleagues and office colleagues. But the pandemic taught us that that single brush does not work for both these groups anymore. So for frontline, what worked for us in the initial days was, leveraging digital for learning, for ensuring that we are continuously communicating. They understand that, the ethos of the organization or the culture, that we are a very people-centric organization. All our decisions are going to be based thinking of our people first. I think just ensuring that communication was constant to our frontline, because we couldn't be with them physically, right? And communication with them was hence far more important, because we weren't talking to them on a day-to-day basis. Store managers were, and regional managers were. So equipping them in terms of an evolved way of working, to stay in touch, the empathy that suddenly needed to be demonstrated across different levels of the organization, I think that amplified. And just keeping them engaged through learning initiatives, because when people don't have anything to do, they tend to get worried. Is my job safe? Am I going to get my salary this month? The business is not making money. Of course, we weren't making money when the stores were shut. So what's happening? So just, to your point, what you heard from manufacturing colleagues as well, that how do you kind of put them at, peace with these queries, questions? So allowing for that two-way dialogue. What's on your mind? Tell us, and we want to address it. So we, ran campaigns through our digital HR platform to say, tell us what's on your mind. We'll have interactions with leaders. We'll have interactions with leaders, not just at the senior leadership level, but your regional managers, your national sales head, and the senior managers around. So that, I think, was just to keep the spirit of we're all in it together going, and giving them that security that whatever we go through, we know it's volatile. We don't know what's happening, but we'll go through it together. To then the store colleagues suddenly being the first ones to come out and about. Yeah, we had to think of families and how we communicate with them to say, we're going to give your family members a safe environment in our stores. And that became such a huge priority for us to communicate beyond just employees, with families, to say your people will be taken care of. So we wrote letters, handwritten letters, messages to families, just to ensure that we are there for them, and we're going to look after, your children, your spouses, your siblings, whoever's walking into a store, to kind of support our customers and be at the front, at the helm of it. And that, I think, has ensured that our frontline people feel taken care of, and don't feel so antagonized about the fact that corporate office still continues to, if I may say, I don't know if it's enjoyment anymore, honestly, but the hybrid way of working. And in fact, we very recently opened office. So we've had the longest run of about 18 months where we've just continuously worked from home. And our frontline has been out and about every single day, except for the periods of lockdown, servicing our customers. So yes, a very, very different aspect in terms of what engages them. Virtual engagement does not work for corporate colleagues. And we have social, distancing norms to manage and look after when it comes to activities, initiatives, etc. for store colleagues. So everything has now gone through a change where initiatives for frontline are meant, designed, and applicable for that group of people, where we've built it by including them in those conversations. Whereas for office colleagues, it's about what's working for them. What do they want? They don't want an engagement activity every Friday, so we don't do those things. But creating benefits that work for them, that gives them the opportunity to be able to kind of, take that time out. Like, we've got a no meeting Thursday. We don't want you to be doing a meeting on Thursday, because we want you to have your time without spending too much time on the screen. So it's very, very different engagement themes coming out based on the needs of these two very unique and different groups.
So I think a couple of things that you said really stand out to me and are really interesting. First, you said that I guess the earlier thing was to make them as cohesive as possible pre-pandemic into having a similar set, because that seemed like the equitable thing to do. But as we're talking about getting real about hybrid being sort of the theme of Thrive Talks this season, saying actually one of the biggest reality checks for getting real about hybrid is you can't bundle these two people on very different work rhythms, work constraints, work challenges through a time like this. That you actually have to sharpen the difference between the two to be fair and do justice to each of them, right? And how was that in terms of empathy and understanding for both sets of employees, right? Like, what are the key messages that you had to drive at to convince people that, listen, it seems unequal, but it's actually more equitable or justified?
So Shreyasi, for something like that, I think communication and transparency is the best way to kind of address that. The store colleagues also acknowledged how much workload had gone up in the office. And of course, because businesses was going through difficult times, we weren't necessarily hiring. So a lot of people had to stretch. In fact, to the point that we used to get letters and messages and emails from our store colleagues saying, we want to do more, send us a laptop and we'll work for you. So there was that kind of empathy that one did not have to teach. I think the pandemic itself has taught us as humans to kind of just be there and reach out and extend that support. So I think in that sense, it was very, if I may say, very gratifying to see how people just came together. Our DC was operational early on, because after the lockdown, it was one of the first things that opened up, but the stores weren't. Our store colleagues kind of reached out to us to say, those who are around the DC, we are happy to go and, kind of help the online business and work at the DC. So just ensuring that people understood what we were doing, how we were trying to solve for problems, and express those problems as real problems, and standing up in front of the entire workforce and saying we don't necessarily have all the solutions. I think demonstrating that vulnerability brought the empathy to the forefront. To say we don't have all the solutions, we don't know how this will shape our business, but the underlying message was our intent is, and our confidence is, to emerge stronger. And we will do that by being in this together with each other. So I think those remained the key pillars of every single communication that was being delivered by the leaders in the business. And the fact that we want people to understand the challenges we were facing as a business, so that we could just have people come forward and resolve those as well. So that really brought empathy to the center of the business.
And now, as you're saying that after 18 months of the corporate office, being on work from home, and now I'm guessing in a staggered, slow, sort of gradual manner, you're all going back to the office. How are the store? Have you enlisted the help and support of the store staff to tell people that actually it's great to be back in normal physical settings? Is there anything that the corporate staff is learning from them?
So interestingly, just pre-lockdown, I'm going back a little bit into
like March 2020.
We as leadership team stood in front of our corporate employees and said, we cannot shut office when lots of other offices were being shut, because we need to ensure that our store colleagues feel included and part of whatever this world was going through. So for 3 to 4 weeks, that was the constant messaging we did with our people. And of course, then everything came to a standstill. And now I think our store colleagues are demonstrating that maturity, where they understand that this is going to remain different. But while we had not opened office till October, we requested colleagues to go to stores and start visiting. Yeah, in whichever city they were, because a lot of people went back to their cities. We ourselves, our estate is spread across 33 cities. So whichever city you're in, just be there with the store colleagues on a day that's comfortable for you, and extend the support in whatever shape and size and format that you can. And we led that from the front as leaders. So for example, as soon as travel started, some of us were out and traveling to different cities as well, and ensuring that we were listening to how they've kind of gone through the whole pandemic, and celebrated some of the wins. So Mumbai as a city, I'll give you an example, Shreyasi, was the last one to open public transport. To open stores, and then the mandate of double vaccination for anyone to enter the malls, and then public transport. And Mumbai as a city only survives because of public transport, for just the way it's built. And the resilience of our people, where Mumbai was one of the first cities where we started to see highest number of vaccination, of course, driven by the organization, but the local leaders there took the initiative to ensure they got people together, the hospitals that we're tied up with, and prioritized our people. So when other stores couldn't open, we were operational in the malls because our people were doubly vaccinated. Our store managers went through the pain of picking and dropping people because public transport wasn't available. And celebrating this at a pan-India level, just something as small as that makes them feel happy. And us to express that, we appreciate every single thing that you do for us, no matter how big or small, and celebrating with them. So we may not be working from office in a way that we were prior to the pandemic, but our support and our visibility to stores is not something that we plan to reduce at all.
So this is a new thing that you've almost added. You would not, as many people from the corporate team would not have gone to stores that deliberately as that has happened. And I'm sure that has led to maybe even more new ideas and lots of camaraderie that did not exist before.
Absolutely. So.
Okay, that's a wonderful new addition to sort of ways of engagement. When we're talking about getting real about hybrid, for a storefront staff or even manufacturing, not so retail, hospitality, all services, aviation, manufacturing, what does hybrid work models really then mean for industries like yours, for the storefront, or it's business as usual, and there is no element of hybridization that has happened?
So I don't think it's business as usual anymore. And reality is, 80% of this world's workforce is deskless. Retail, grocery, healthcare, hospitality, food and restaurant, manufacturing, warehousing and distribution. All of these are frontline workers. And while they are deskless and they don't necessarily have the opportunity to work from home, but I think hybrid for this group of people is a lot more about embracing digital to drive efficiency and productivity. If I look at our warehouse and delivery operations, they're far more digital today, delivering way greater productivity and lesser manual intervention than it was ever in the past. Right? Digital also allows for better safety standards in the store, compliance of various processes, and communication. Right? A lot of that has evolved and changed, and suddenly there's a lot more acceptance of this new way of working. To me, this is more the hybrid of this group of population.
So the hybrid, I love that deskless categorization. So you think the hybrid for deskless is more digital in processes and communication, and I can imagine communication as it is for headquarters staff. The hybrid is work from anywhere and work from office. They were always more digital, but it's actually a physical space. It's very interesting. Sort of, convergence of what hybrid means.
It is, but these are people who are used to doing laborious tasks, right? But it's also now we need to think about safety in closed environments, right? So whether it's in stores, you need digitized processes to reduce the manpower to allow for social distancing. It delivers safety, and that is hybrid. Right? Interacting with lesser people in your distribution center is for your safety. Right, and that is hybrid. So I think those are the softer elements, which in my mind are hybrid work, hybrid for this workforce.
So tell me now 2 skills in terms of to get your store staff ready for sort of this new way of hybrid that they're working, to make them safer, as well as sort of the happy consequence for the company for it to also be more productive. What are the 2 skills you really had to focus on giving the store cadre to get ready for this?
I think number 1 is just the digital mindset. Because we've also introduced a lot more digital way of working. So for example, even from a business model standpoint, a lot more customers are now interacting with you online. So when you talk to a customer as well, you need digital mindset as well to know whether they're savvy, have they, something that may not be available in the store, but is there on our website, how do you pitch that? So I think digital has now become such an integral part of our work life that you need to take people on that journey to understand what that means for the organization. I think that's more from a business skill standpoint. And I think from an individual standpoint, resilience, just being able to handle setbacks, being able to handle, difficult situations is an extremely important aspect of just that growth mindset and moving forward as an individual. And I think people have gone through very difficult times. Even our employees were impacted in stores. And of course, we have certain protocol if a store employee is kind of tested positive, etc. But, how do you kind of deal with that fear of, oh, I was with that person yesterday and he or she has tested positive? You need everyday resilience to be out in the stores. It's not easy. It's not easy. So that's been a key skill for us that we've been focusing a lot on.
Let me take a question from the audience of exactly that, right? And this is, I'm sure, something that we've all been talking about. How do you deal, and to your last point, how do you deal with the mental stress for employees in the business, right? And especially when their personal safety and through some crazy waves about this fear and anxiety about, a customer testing positive or another storefront, what has happened, and this resilience. And how motivated were they from sort of a sales target perspective and revenue as they were out and about and dealing with this? How have you reconciled both?
Actually, the motivation level went through peaks and troughs, Shreyasi. So, post the initial period of lockdown, as people were coming back to stores, there was a lot of positivity. There was a lot of excitement to say, we want to get out of the house. We want to see the business kind of start to run again, generate revenue, etc. So there was a lot of positivity around just being back at the stores. But after that initial excitement kind of fizzled out because, we all got frustrated after a point in time sitting at home, right? Then came the fear of when you started to see people around you get impacted, when you started to kind of see things, when you're stepping out every morning and someone in the family is feeling worried about you, those emotions started to come as a phase 2. And that's when we had to kind of deploy a lot of mindfulness workshops at the stores, specifically for stores, where we would do morning and evening sessions for different shifts to just kind of help them express themselves. Plus, it's about creating that ecosystem of safety. How did we show up when someone was unwell? How did we create an environment where they felt safe? So you won't believe, Shreyasi, when we were kind of putting out our guidelines of what's going to be the future of our store operations, we had to redo the layout of the stores to allow for social distancing. Every single store had to be remapped and recaded to, from a space standpoint. We had to think about every single aspect of that customer journey to say, today there are different experts of different business units in a store. You're today an expert of women's wear, but there's another person for women's wear, menswear or kids wear. How do you kind of think of a customer journey where customers don't want to interact with so many people? And we don't want colleagues interacting with so many customers. It goes
both ways.
What was going to happen in fitting room? It's close proximity. What about a product that's been tried by a customer? So there was every single element from a customer journey was thought out, keeping in mind both customer safety and employee safety. And again, continuous communication and taking feedback to say, is this working? Is this not working? We didn't have a magic wand that said, day one, the way we open our operation is going to be perfect, right? So we continuously heard the concerns that people would face on the ground and keep refreshing our guidelines to kind of just say, what's the best way to kind of handle these things? So just that dialogue that continued, the opportunity that people got to, create that future of service, future of store operations. And we completely enhanced our benefits from an overall well-being standpoint. Physical well-being, your doctor on call, ensuring that you have the COVID coverage, all of those pieces were put in very early on. Right? From a mental well-being standpoint, the mindfulness, the EAP that we had, but the thrust on EAP, etc., kind of grew. And equipping people managers to have these conversations, watch the signs was also an aspect that we focused on. And then financial well-being, because that's also a whole part of wellness, right? So just ensuring that people's salaries was paid on time, anyone who needed advances, etc. Just ensuring that people were not suffering through it. So it's a combination of just how do you show up as an organization to, for people to build that, continue to have that trust in you, that if something were to happen, I will be taken care of.
Which takes care of a little bit of the mental anxiety. If this happens, what happens to me, what happens to my family, will come from actual measures. And then what you're saying is these morning, evening sessions on mindfulness and things like that. And of course, we'll come to the next section. We'll talk about the future of, the customer experience and store journey. But one question, let me just take, and to close out this theme that's come from the audience, do skilling models for store employees differ across regions? You touched a little bit upon Mumbai from a different example, but even India is a very rich, complicated, complex country. Have you seen different regions, different stores, different customers have, maybe cities that were really hit in the second wave have a very different sort of, fear, justifiably of health? Any interesting nuances and differences there across the country?
So interestingly, it's not just customers, even from an employee standpoint, right? There are, our stores in Kerala. Kerala has been one of the worst hit state in this country. So how have we, we've had to kind of work with our Kerala colleagues in a different way. Chennai has gone through floods very recently, but even other than that, Chennai was one city that locked down in March but opened in September. 6 months, this group of people had not, of course, and when you're not working, it's another level of anxiety that one goes through. So Chennai was one of the first cities where we said we're going to reallocate those employees and put them in different kind of activities and have them support office. So we created roles, to ensure that they felt busy and had something productive to do to feel good about themselves.
That's such a massive mental health thing immediately there, with nothing to do for 6 months and the worries and anxieties, right?
Correct. 6 months. I mean, of course, we were suffering as a business because it was the last city to open malls, but we also were conscious of what does it mean for our people. Yeah. Mumbai, again, the whole example of public transport, right, and people coming together. But people came together, and when we got to know as an organization that this is what our store managers were doing, we said, stop, we're going to give you cab services, right? So every city in that sense has had its own set of nuances to kind of manage. Mumbai didn't open fitting rooms till this year. So our store operations had to run very differently. We had to, even something like a return and exchange in the store was open for 90 days because we wanted customers to still have that leverage of coming back.
Instead of 30 days.
Correct. So just, those nuances had to be very regional. And see, our customers are different across different cities. To the point, our product is different in a lot of cities, right? So we've got winter stores in the north, we've got summer stores in the south and west. You'll see a lot more linen there. You'll see right now, if you walk into a store here in Delhi NCR, you'll see a lot more winter wear. So in that sense, your customer preferences are different. Your customer needs are different. And employees are then trained to handle that. So yet it is the online channel, the digital channel that connects all of us to say, understand what our overall proposition and offering is, and alter your, your interaction with the customers, keeping end-to-end organization in mind. So absolutely, there were, because laws were evolving, guidelines, rules.
And so many were state laws, state guidelines, right?
It was massive to handle.
It really has been a hell of an 18 months for that kind of operations for you guys. I can only imagine.
Correct. So not the easiest, but yes, every city and state in that sense then needed to be looked at differently basis the rules and the norms of that city and state. So yes, I mean, we've had to manage.
I know. And I can understand, just to close out this first theme, you started with saying what we were saying, that hey, let's have unified policy so everybody feels real. The fact is now not just storefront. I mean, the hybrid is, even for HR policy, is hybrid is not just storefront and corporate staff, but now it's storefront in different regions and each region being different. It's actually in a way a sprint, like more and more local. Even in policy, right? And in everyday issues, then it can, for a large organization like yours and a global organization, that effort to go, the hybrid is also a local global hybrid.
It surely is, absolutely, Shreyasi. But it also, what it means is that the businesses are becoming more complex. And this is here to stay.
Yeah, no, this is here to stay. Definitely. Great. Let's move to the second theme that we have, and which is sort of, you started us off on it in terms of describing the store experience, right? But what is the main difference? Yeah, of course, like all the space layout issues from social distancing, the fact that store staff then had to maybe double hat as being experts of two categories, women's wear and menswear, or, whatever, toiletries and children's wear, or whatever it is. But how have customers fundamentally changed? And how do you support your storefront as well as your corporate front in being able to service this new customer?
Yeah. So, we knew when we were reopening stores and the malls had just opened, we knew that if a customer was going to walk in, the customer was not walking in because they wanted to just, be around a mall. They're coming in for a specific need, right? That itself was very different to how a customer walked into a store pre-pandemic. People like you and I would go with friends, want to look around, step out, not necessarily make a purchase, right? However, if we go now, chances are we're going for a particular reason and have something in mind. So the first thing was, how do you equip your own employees to understand that customer need? Right? And how do you engage in a conversation in a manner that's not overwhelming for the customer as well? Because our service ethos is very simple, to say we're not going to overwhelm the customer, but let the customer know we're around for whatever help they need from us. But this was a time where we had to shift that to say, no, we need to make that connection with the customer to understand what they want, and then map out their journey in a manner that's least exposure for them in the store and gets them what they want, which means that our people had to understand not just about that interaction and what the customer wanted, but exactly where things were and what we had, right? And that's a lot. So for me, if I was someone who was working in the store in one particular business unit, as we call it in women's wear, I would know the women's wear collection. But now I was expected to know women's wear, men's wear, kids wear, to your point, lingerie, beauty, everything, right? So that was a big shift. Plus, we also knew that customers are not going to buy what they've bought in the past, right? When you're working from home, your needs are very different. You want relaxed fits, you want comfortable clothes, you want more loungewear. The ties and the formal wears are gone.
Shoes, nobody's buying heels.
So just, so I think from that standpoint, we also had the back end work to do to say, how do you now map out the customer journey with the new needs in mind? So how is your product proposition going to evolve? And how are you then going to map that in a store where it's convenient for a customer, because you map out the journey from a customer standpoint? So that was a combination of front end and back end that had to work together to bring to life. So our buyers had to work with our visual merchandisers, who then had to work with the store colleagues. It's one cohesive unit is what they had to kind of think about when thinking of that new customer. And we also did a lot of market research at that point in time. We reached out to our loyal customers to say, are you comfortable coming to store? What's going to bring you to store? Is there an alternate way you would like to shop with us? While we had online shopping through our own website, we created something called assisted shopping. So Shreyasi today can call one of our stores closest to her location, do a WhatsApp call. A fashion stylist will walk her through the entire store and deliver it within 24 hours. The products will be in her house. So that's really what we kind of said. Customer can't come to us, let's get to the customer. But what that does is puts a lot more pressure on the back end of ensuring people are trained, they understand what exists, where, and how can we enable the customer life cycle to continue to engage with us.
Oh my God, this is fascinating. But Mukta, this is fascinating, and this is a lot of changes. So one big change from a store experience that I heard you say as you started answering this question was your service ethos was actually built on let the customer explore, right? They spend time in the store, they buy one thing after 45 minutes or whatever. Now it completely changes. Say, how quickly can I service them so they get what they want and get out? And right, which is it's a pretty dramatic shift in how a store staff has to behave, because it's so different. that's one, of course. Then obviously categories and product knowledge and expansion of product knowledge for each person in the store staff to have is the second that I figured. And third, you're saying is adding new services like this WhatsApp feature of a fashion stylist, which is again, there's just so many analogies of hybrid here. Which is again sort of a hybrid between full online shopping that I just go on your site to me going to my neighborhood Marks and Spencer. This is sort of the in between hybrid customer experience, right? So each one of those would have had training to do. Which one was most challenging? And to the first point about this customer who, the exploratory customer who had to now be targeted in a precise shopper, is that an enduring customer behavior? Has that, as India has relaxed, do you still see that, or has that changed?
I think last few weeks that has relaxed significantly, but last few weeks are also showing a trend of footfalls almost getting to a pre-pandemic level. Right? As people are now doubly vaccinated, people are allowed, feeling more confident. In number of cases in India are insignificant given the population. So the sentiment is positive at the moment, and hence some of this is not necessarily top of mind. Even for a customer to walk in, I think there is a lot of more comfort and confidence to say I can go out. But initially, yes, I think there were two things that were most dramatic for us to kind of bring to life from an employee standpoint in terms of their customer interaction. One was this whole change of ethos to say me letting a customer know I'm around versus the conversation that you need to strike. So not everybody is an extrovert on the shop floor.
Initiating the conversation is very different from just servicing a question, right?
So that whole, so we had to actually create opening sentences and share with people to say, how are you going to start a conversation? The conversation starters itself for us were 2 pages long, and we said, pick your style. Doesn't have to be one. The second more interesting one, which I haven't touched on till now, Shreyasi, is we had to train all our colleagues to do something we call as fit by sight.
Oh, wow. So I can't wait to go to a Marks and Spencer store after this conversation to now decode some of what you train people to do. But please continue.
Please do experience. So fit by sight was something we covered all our employees through, and was about when you see someone walk in, how do you kind of understand what size will they fit in? Yeah, because a lot of cities didn't allow for fitting rooms initially. People do want to try. Yeah. And you don't want to give them too many products to try as well, because we had put a guideline to say every product that's tried is going to get quarantined in the back of the store for minimum 72 hours before it comes on the shop floor, which means that the life cycle to kind of get it off the shelf and sold to a customer reduces significantly, right? And products have limited life cycle on a shop floor. So to manage that complexity, we created this whole concept of fit by sight. And it's most important in the lingerie wear. People usually know their size. I know I'm an S, an M, whatever. It's easy for them to navigate that. But interestingly, people's sizes were changing as they came back to shop with us. and lingerie was one of the area where people do want to try it. So that was one of the biggest thrust for us to say, how do you look at someone and then say, pick the right product and recommend that we think this is going to be a right size. And that was difficult. Conceptualizing it to say, how are we going to support our customers in an environment where there are no fitting rooms? Our return policy is linked to that. And how do we bring that aspect of limited customers shouldn't have to come back for returns and exchanges, right? Ideally. So that's where the fit by sight was a big concept for us, where we spent a lot of energy in conceptualizing it. Our product team had to give us, specific measurements. People had to understand what that means and how are you going to recommend that to a customer, was probably one of the more complex things we landed last year.
And how do you do it? So you have to create a sort of a training module on it, like visual. So, and how all of these training sessions were delivered online at the store. So one laptop or one monitor, and then the entire store staff watching it together?
So a combination of things. See, the learning team, which is part of the HR team, was actually visiting the stores because there are certain
so much immense changes, right? There's so many things going on.
Yes. Right. And similarly, HRBP it's a role that you have to be out and about in the field with the people. So the first time when we were introducing the concept, yes, it was all online. But what we did was we engaged with the store managers to ensure the store managers understood it. So we did like a TTT with them. As well as every store has a role called coach. And that coach is someone who kind of enables onboarding and learning journeys of the rest of the people of that store. So the store managers and coaches went through a TTT. And post that, we did certain audits, so to say, in terms of how has this program landed. And there were assessments that were linked to this program specifically that people had to clear so that we understood what's the knowledge that's getting imparted. Is there understanding that's getting built in? And then trying with people to say, okay, if, even if it's a digital session, I show up and say, what do you think my size is, etc. Because you had to do that even with assisted shopping on a WhatsApp call.
On WhatsApp, absolutely.
So the role play of this was very, very critical. And then eventually, as the store started to open, it was the HR team that kind of went into the store to just do a sense check of, has this landed in a manner that can be converted for the customer in a way that they feel comfortable? Because you also don't want the customer to feel intimidated by someone recommending in a
vending, like it is an overfamiliar, like it can sometimes feel overfamiliar and kind of creepy, right?
That balance was important, which is where that the learning partners across regions had to kind of ensure that they're supporting the coaches and the store managers.
And so this has gone to what, more than 1,800 people have gone through this in the last 10, 12 months?
Yes. All store colleagues, which is about 1,800 odd people, would have gone through it.
Okay. If there was one thing that you felt like, is something that is really, that you guys have learned over the last 18 months that you think is going to be instrumental in creating this new storefront experience, like a great discovery that has happened, which one is that? And second, which of these shifts that employees and store staff had to make was really genuinely very difficult for them to imbibe?
I think the new way of servicing customers was very difficult for people because the average tenure of a frontline is also decently tenured. We in the industry, we enjoy one of the lowest attrition rate. People want to continue to work for us and with us. So it was more of a mindset shift than just, here's a new way to serve the customer. I think that was difficult. And we've always maintained, we know that there are certain brands that would kind of, suddenly feel like they're tagging you, what you want, etc. That's not our ethos. So we had to also find that balance to say we knew that's not what we want to be as well as a brand, but we want to be there for a customer, to the point that they are comfortable with us. So that was a mindset shift, and picking on cues of body language, how the customer is responding, just ensuring that emotional intelligence is also applied to this was also important. That was difficult. But interestingly, the learning also came out of this, Shreyasi, where our customers actually are liking the interactions that they have with people. Now, why has that happened is because in the back end, we've had to upskill our people to know all the products in the store. The experience of that personal shopper, if I may say, is far appreciated by the customer also, as against having to talk to 4 different people for their needs. And that, I think, is as a concept we would want to ensure we build on.
Which is a pretty fundamental shift, right? Like, because your store is kind of like a home, like a family store. Like when I go and I'll buy something for my son, I'll buy something for myself, I'll buy something for the house, right? Like, which is, and then the personal shopping, the stylist or whatever shopper makes sense because it's a wide store with a wide product mix. You're not just thinking about, that's pretty significant in the way that things can evolve in terms of future of retail. And actually makes the difference from a hybrid perspective into, otherwise I won't come to the store for convenience because that I will go online. I have to come for a warmer experience, right? And not for convenience. And then what is the experience that happens, I'm guessing?
Correct, because most of the customers that walk in today are walking for something. The window shopping days or customers are way lesser now. And hence we realize that the customers are appreciating that experience that they end up getting to talk to one person who can help them navigate through the whole store.
Okay. Let me just take one question on this topic from the audience, and then we'll go to the last theme. Is there been any difference between men and women's store staff through through these last 18, 20 months?
I think as an organization,
and customers as well, male and female customers, any changes?
Let me first come to the employees and then customers. So from an employee standpoint, I think we've had to create hybrid opportunities for women colleagues who are new and expectant mothers. And we put them in roles. So even if they're store colleagues, we've put them in office kind of roles and given them responsibilities to just, help them through the initial period till they're ready. If for expectant mothers, the entire pregnancy duration plus maternity till they're ready to come back. And for those new mothers, just to ensure their safety because they're vulnerable, the kid is small. So from a women's standpoint, that support that we are there for them through their whole, life cycle and some of those things, I think has only just helped us ensure that we've retained our women colleagues. We've not seen women drop out of our workforce.
Nice.
And that to us is a matter of pride because we know that, women in workforce is a leaking pipeline, specifically the responsibilities that pandemic has put on them on managing the household alongside their day jobs. So that I think is something that's worked well for us. From a customer standpoint, we have more women customers walking in than men. And typically when a woman walks in, to your point, as you said, you would buy for the entire family. They're the ones who buy for the whole family. So we've not really seen any impact in terms of women not walking in. Thankfully, as I said, the footfalls are also kind of going back. It's not 100% there, but almost 90% there. We've not seen that impact come in. In fact, from an online shopping standpoint and new customer acquisition, it's more women than men. So women rock.
Yeah. Excellent. Last theme. Wow, we're only at 12 minutes left. The hour just went by. The business and hybrid, right? And here, you spoke a little bit about categories changing because people shopping for relaxed fits and, lots of categories actually not being needed by most people. So how has hybrid, other people's hybrid, the fact that professional lives have gone hybrid and there's some activities people don't do, changed your product mix?
Yeah. So we actually, the fashion industry saw a new term get coined, which is above the keyboard dressing.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. There's above the keyboard.
Yeah.
ATK dressing.
Yes. So that's a real thing now, so smart tops, like shrugs, etc., are still a good thing for people to kind of wear. I think accessories are important, but it's all about the keyboard, right? So what that has done is a lot more loungewear is being sold. I think our sale of PJs has never been as high as it has been with loungewear.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So I think generally loungewear as a category has grown significantly for us. And of course, I think I mentioned this earlier, formal wear has constantly seen a decline. So that's an area, even when we were hit by the pandemic, typically your fashion product cycle runs a few months ahead because it needs that time at the factory to be created. And for us to manage what was going to get sold, the lockdown happened in March, and for us to think about what was going to get sold in autumn, winter, because summer is already made. You can't do anything
about that.
Summer is on its way into the stores. What are we going to do with winter wear? What's going to sell? What are the customers going to want? How are we going to manage that? I think that was such an overwhelming task to even just imagine for our buyers to say, how is this customer need going to evolve? And how do we ensure we have the relevant products in the store at the right time? right? So we know we learned a few things. We underpegged ourselves on maybe bling wear around Diwali, but Diwali did pick up last year, so we knew we were going to do it differently this year. And you can see our sequin work, etc., in the stores. But that has been a learning journey, and it's just pretty much running in parallel with how customer needs are evolving. What are people searching for online? People are searching for, as I said, relaxed fit tops, pajamas and PJs or shorts, way more than people have in the past. The trousers are not working. The trousers are evolving now in terms of the innovation that's happening in the space of the fabric itself, because people want more comfortable way of wearing trousers, etc. So suddenly you'll see, things that you wouldn't call trousers are now being called trousers.
Yes.
It's a general industry thing. It's not unique.
It's a good word.
It's a good word. So I think from formal wear and loungewear, now we're actually seeing something into smart loungewear is where we're transitioning into, where people want to wear sweat and go down their condo, go for a walk as well. So from workplace to my walk downstairs, that's the seamless look now people are looking for.
And how do you train your stylist teams? Because so two questions as a follow-up, because you're anticipating how customers will be feeling every 3 months, and have you had to shorten production cycles and design to store because people have gone through so much? And how does one do that with with your factories and sourcing through sort of global lockdowns and all the supply chain crisis that's happened?
Oh, supply chain crisis is another topic that we must touch upon of hybrid. But yes, it's these, as I said, there is no, I think we've had to be very agile when it came to adapting to some of this, right? So, we took decisions to say, oh no, we had put certain products in production, but it's not going to make sense. Can we halt the production, see what we can do with that fabric and work with the factories in another way? So one had to constantly innovate in a very agile manner to say, this is not going to work. How can we cut our losses before it goes into production from a sourcing standpoint? So that's more around just, again, working with partner factories and ensuring that you're taking them along the journey and covering for, their expenses, as well as ensuring that your losses are controlled. And as I said, the stylists, so we know the designs that we're going into, and sometimes you kind of go small. You don't go too deep in terms of buying how much depth you buy.
Lots.
Yeah. So you will test. And while, of course, sometimes that does hamper customer experience because you suddenly, as a customer, may feel it's gone out of stock, but you're testing for better AI, information to come to in the next season when you'll buy the right depth. So there is no right or wrong way, because the data also is not going to generate any science for you to build on.
Because there's no patterns yet, right? Like every month, every season through these 18 months has been a different season in that sense.
Correct. So the store, so we also kind of, the ones that we don't buy in so much depth won't go to all stores. It'll go to certain stores where we know things will move in a certain way. And then stylists. So we've got a stylist in all our large stores because we've got multiple formats. We've got our full line stores and we've got our lingerie and beauty stores. So in all our large stores, we've got 2 fashion stylists. And fashion stylists then are, they understand the lines that are coming, and we allow them to create their looks and share back with us. In fact, they are our influencers. They post their own content on social media, etc. So we because they're stylists, they're the creative ones. Of course, buyers have a certain look designed for a product. The visual merchandisers want a certain look to land on the mannequin and in the store, and the stylists bring that to life for the customer. So what will work on a certain body type? How do you style it with some accessories? How do you kind of style it with, in different colors, etc. are things that so there is a broad framework, but we allow our stylists to remain creative around it.
And on this also, then from a hybrid perspective and the earlier conversation about how different cities have behaved and the new guidelines, you're saying that there is also, there are some global designs I think you bring, right? There are some designs India-wide that you bring, but do you think then there's also then much more, if smaller sizes, smaller batches, then there's also much more local, because the stylist going and deciding as they're seeing what even people are wearing when they come to the mall and deciding on that basis, which your global stores, global stylists would not be able to get. Has that also changed the mix?
Yes, that has changed the mix. And I'll give you 2 lines that we experimented with this year. One was the women fusion line. You know, we were not sure. We're a hardcore Western wear retailer, right? And to try with fusion, we of course got certain number of lines, not in too much depth, but we experimented with it, and we know our customers loved it. And that was in the summer for women wear. Today, if you walk into our stores, we've launched something called occasion wear for men. We've got the band galas, but a slightly Western feel to it. So, you know, we're also experimenting because we know our customers evolving. And the stylists are then given, of course, there are pre-books in terms of the looks that are there, but how do you play it out to a customer is a very live interaction based on what you think the customer is going to like, what are they, to your point, how have they walked in, you know, and everything matters. How, you know, how do they like to keep their hair to their, you know, it's every single aspect of a customer that brings the whole look to life. And the stylist is on that shop floor, you know, kind of building it block by block.
Understood. And so I lost my train of thought, but I'll come back to that question. I had a really interesting question to ask you as a follow-up to that. But let's go to the larger hybrid question, and we only have 4 minutes. Larger hybrid question about this about online shopping, the mix. One of the biggest business impacts, I'm guessing, is the mix of your total revenue coming from getting acquired through online and offline. What has that journey been like, and how permanent do you think it is?
So that's here to stay.
Yeah.
Now what is happening is, see, customers in the past, a lot of online customers were online customers. That was their preferred style, smaller population. And most of the others preferred the experience of being in an offline store. Today's customer has become
both
omnichannel. They want to interact with the brand across channels. So I want to be able to buy something online, but I want an exchange of this. So let me walk into a store, return it, and take a different size. And that is the shift we've brought in our customer journey as well in the last 18 months, where we've become truly omnichannel. So if you buy something online, you can go return it in a store, exchange it in a store. You can pick it from a store, you know, because so you can try it before you actually bring it back home. And that's the future, because those who want to walk into a store want that experience. But those who have limited time and are in the need of something very, very quickly want this omni-channel way of being able to interact with the brand seamlessly anywhere across.
Yes, I explore online. I order through my WhatsApp experience shopper, and I go and pick up in the store. So for one thing, I could actually be touching
across channels.
On all channels. And you think that is more and more the experience for the largest number of shoppers or your buyers?
It's the future shopper. That's how people will now learn to shop. That if I want M&S, I should be able to interact seamlessly on any channel I want. So for us also, the internal shift that's going through is how do you build that journey in a seamless manner for an omni-channel customer?
Yeah, and my earlier question, and that question came back to me when you were talking about stylists and what's happening. So the skill from a skill perspective for both these changes, this future omni-channel future shopper, as well as, you know, the stylist who's constantly listening in and creating looks and things like that. Which skill for the stylist, which skill is it? Just like creative mindset, you know, extreme agility, like what kind of core cognitive behavioral skills have you given them?
Stylist is creative, very clearly. And we can give them the framework of how you need to work around. And that's easier to teach, but you can't teach creativity to someone. That's inherent, and that's what we hire those people for. But I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the session as well, ensuring the digital mindset of our store colleagues comes up is primarily keeping in mind this omni-channel journey of the customer, because they are interacting with the brand at different times in different ways. So how are you anticipating that journey of the customer in a manner that's integrated in the back end, but seamless in the front end for the customer?
Exactly. So you come in, they know to ask, where did you see this online? Yes. Did you? No, I can imagine. So this is still work in progress. So I'm guessing that this new evolution of the omni-channel future, where are we on it, and what percentage of your staff is sort of genuinely fully trained on this?
I don't think we're fully there yet. We're still on that journey, but we take a lot of pride in saying we're the only retail brand that launched a website in an omni-channel way from the first day of the operations of the website. So that journey from us as an organization is already being planned for the last many years to keep omni-channel, and hence I think a corporate office is way ahead on that journey, where we are constantly now intuitively thinking end-to-end omni-channel, whereas store colleagues, there's a lot that they are going through, and we are constantly kind of ensuring we emphasize how important this is for us. So, endless aisles in the stores are things, click and collect, are all things that we know are important for people to understand. And as and when the business progresses and our processes mature, people will, come on that journey with us as well.
Excellent. Mukta, we're right at 5 o'clock. Thank you so much for such a interesting conversation that packs in from technology to digital to consumer preferences to L&D to motivation. I think we've really covered a lot of rich ground in an hour. I hope you had as much fun as I did listening to you. And I'm sure, thank you everyone for joining us. And to those of you who will also listen in as we send these recordings to you, thank you so much for your time. This is our conversation. I hope if you've got to this point, you haven't missed it. So good for you. Thank you again, Mukta.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you, Shreyasi.
Thanks, everyone. With that, we'll call this Thrive Talk to an end. Bye. Have a good evening.